industry, they will not follow this kind of process. The reason why they don't follow research, a survey design research process is that it takes time. So it has to go through step-by-step procedures. And but for the industry, and things happen and comes out very quick. So sometimes they have to adapt their design projects very quick. They have a lot of resource limitations. So for the industry, like if you have a chance to work after graduate from the school, and you will see a lot of methods that you learn from schools. They are too stringent and too formalized methods. So the industry normally they prefer to use quick and dirty methods, so they can pick up something. And sometimes people will normally if we do research, then we will sometimes we interview maybe 10 people, 20. Industry sometimes they only interview 3 and 5 or only 2. So they just want to get some feedback, and that's all. They want to move on to the next stage. So maybe for you, you will be a little bit bored about this, but just bear with me. You can make some change after you graduate, as long as you have an idea of the whole process. So there are 3 things I'll cover for the accident. So first I'll talk about the process for planning a survey design study, and then I'll some of you already know how to collect data from participants, but some of you maybe you have never get involved with a user study before. So I'll just give you some ideas about how to collect data with participants, and what are the things you have to be aware of when you interact with participants. And next, I'll give you some time for group discussions on the service design projects topics. So if you have any questions, just feel free to raise your hands.
Yeah, he give me the feedback that you are so tired. So if you have any questions, feel free.
So I have been teaching assistant when I was a PhD student. So I was for about 4 years. I was teaching assistant for the same course, and they are all undergraduate students. And all of them they like to raise their hand, ask questions about any information.
US, right?
But they are all Americans. Sometimes they ask good questions. Sometimes the questions are not very good, but sometimes even though the questions are not very good, but it can bring out some new discussions, and normally people will get some insights from that question. So just don't feel shy or don't hesitate if you have any questions. Okay, well, I mentioned about Lohmann's model in the morning. So some of you already know the model, some of you don't. And actually, I want to highlight again because we talk about user-centered. And so this is a Lohmann's conceptual model design. And in Lohmann's model, it has 3 components. One is designer, the model designer, and the component of system image, and the component of user. So it has 3 components. And normally designer's model means in designer's head, like we in our head, what we perceive how the systems is going to be, or how the service is going to be. And from the user's part, they have their own expectations regarding how to, what is a good service or what is a good product, and what are the features a service design or service should provide to them. And this model, I think it's good that you can keep that in mind whenever you do your design, since the only way designers and users can communicate is through this component. These 2 people, they have different mindsets, different concerns. This is the only part that these 2 people can communicate. So you should focus. So you have to be very careful about the image, the things that you present in front of your clients or customers. And so what if there are some disconnections between the two? So your customers will feel angry, sometimes they'll feel frustration, sometimes they complain, and sometimes they have very slow performance on doing something, right? So those are negative effects. And so how do we fix the problem? You know, if there's problems currently, if a service is not designed well, and so there's a mismatch between the service provider's objective and the user's needs and the everyday expectations. How do people fix the problem?
Take feedback and then improve.
Good. All right. So, anything else? Yeah.
Verbally ask what the problem is, and then you come up with a solution. If you don't have a system, if I have a client and I'm a designer, I verbally ask them what the problem is, and then they will share the problem, what the problem is, and then we will make a note.
You are right. This is the most
Interaction.
perfect solution. But sometimes there are three methods. One is through training, and second is through documentation, and third is try to match the two, right? And so for a person, if there's no service existing in the world and you're designing something brand new, so you have to design a service in a way that users can easily pick up how to use it. So you may show some instructions or some sign or something that can really engage users or clients when they come into your service. So you can do documentations, and sometimes training is the very the poorest way to match the two, the model. So, and the third one is the ideal approach. Right. But again, so why do we have to study clients or users or customers before we do service design? And there are a lot of different reasons. The first, so the clients, they decide whether or not they want to use your service. So it's not the designers or service providers, we decide you will use our service. So customers, they make a decision. So you have to listen to their voices. And the second is that I mentioned about this point in the morning. So you have, normally your clients, your customers, they use your service based on their previous knowledge about service, or sometimes they have some characteristics. And sometimes if they have use some similar services before, they might expect you to provide some features in your service. But in that case, if you don't provide that, your users or clients will feel frustrated. And for example, if they go to a bank or go to a hospital, they expect something. But if you don't provide that, and your service will not be considered good or to your clients or to your customers. So, and sometimes users, your clients, they have never had this service before, and sometimes your clients, they have some, like I mentioned earlier, they have some physical limitations. They cannot walk, or they cannot see very well. Like if you are targeting an elder population, so you have to think about how you design a touch point in a way those elder populations, they can easily perceive, understand the services you provide to them. So you have to think about your client's prior knowledge and experience. And then, all right, so at this point, you may want to ask me one question. Some students, they ask one question about, all right, so why there are still some good services, but they don't study their clients. They don't study their customers, but they are successful. So why do we bother to do
Like
that?
Apple, right? They are very well known, so not to
Yeah.
do that, right?
Right. Okay. So the argument is that we're not Apple.
Well, but
Yeah.
maybe there's Steve Jobs, and he's a very, very like a picky customer. So if you just do the user test with the Steve Jobs, I think it's done. I don't know, right?
Right.
Because he gave a very harsh and severe feedback, and then he is much, much picky than normal. So and maybe they did, but only a
Right.
very picky small number. Right?
So a lot of times, as far as I know, that in Apple, they still have some like service design or user experience people. They're doing research, but when they turn in the reports, people on a high level they can reject all the results. Right. So like Apple, so Steve Jobs, right? He's sometimes he doesn't care, just follow his intuition. And I heard from a lot of industrial designers, they are very successful designers, and they just say, okay, Apple is going to fail if the CEO is not going to change. Yeah, and so I heard a lot from them, right? So we don't know later. Yeah, he's gone. So, but anyway, so another reason for why we have to study or to understand our customers is that there are a lot of our competitors, they are studying the customers now. So you have to do the same thing, otherwise you're going to fail. Right. So you can see this picture. So sometimes your clients, they bring their own different luggage. They look the same, but actually they are all different. So you have to consider about your clients, differences between them. And so when we study our clients, because we want to know the current problems. So we want to know the clients, their frustrations and their confusions and some efficiencies of the service. And we want to know exactly what part of the current service they are valid or they are invalid. Like which touch points has some problems, and where to identify that through studying the users. And we have to make sure, also we have to make sure that the outcome of our service design will satisfy users' needs. So that's why we have to study our clients and customers. And also want to make sure that our clients will not feel disappointed with our results. And next, I want to introduce you approach on macroeconomics. And I think it fits very well for service design projects. And since actually the macroeconomics, it is an approach and coming from human factors and economics. And this approach, I think emerged in 1980s. Right, it's kind of not very old tradition approach of theory, but there are some people that use this approach. And this approach is that it can help people think out of the box. So when we try to do a design and we try to step back a little bit and we try to look at the service design problems from a systems perspective. And here I say the systems means we consider the human, technology, and environment, the three components together as a system. So actually, so a system is composed of personnel, products, internal environment, external environment, and system, and joint design. And I want to show you this, to illustrate a little bit more about this approach. And when you are doing a service design project, and just keep this in mind, because So it's not just we look at problems from humans and products and environment side. So here you can see the three ones, they have interactions. So if we are doing a survey design, we are focused on a particular touch point. But if we are designing a touch point without considering humans' capabilities, limitations, or without considering environments associated with the touch point, and it's very likely we will fail, right? So it's very likely we cannot design a good touch point. And so you can see there's some interactions between them. And here, environments can refer to internal environment, external environment. And an internal environment can be like humidity, temperature, and can be a lot of things associated with environments. But when it refers to its external environments, it can refer to corporate culture or some corporate value. Like McDonald's, they have their own corporate value, or they have corporate objective or something. They insist they have to be part, or they have to be an element of their service. So that part, you have to consider that as well when you are trying to design a service. And also external environment can also include some political issues as well. So, and if you look at here, so we are not only designing the circle, we are designing here. We are also designing interactions. This is in macroeconomics, this is called joint design. So how can we design in a way that these two components can match very well? How can we design in a way the touch point can fit the environment very well? And how can we design in a way that human and environment can fit very well? So you keep this in mind when you're doing survey design projects. You are not only designing the grid, you're designing everything. Right. So this will reflect your design here. So a lot of people, they just try to find problems, touch points, they find the problems, try to fix it, but they don't really look into all the issues at here. And from here, you can, alright, so there's one thing you have to know about this model, and this one I created it, but it's not in a textbook. But here you can see human is a more difficult component to change. But it's hard for you to change your customers. What you can change is these two components. Right. So since your customers, they come from different backgrounds, and different attributes, experience, needs, and they have different skill level, and they have different motivations when they approach your service, and have different intelligence. So some people they cannot read very well. So in that situations, whenever you want to present some information, maybe you present it more graphically or using illustrations. So try to avoid doing the product center, touch point center design approach. So the whole purpose here is to get a harmonized system at the macro level. This will be the macro level, and also at the micro level. Right, so any question about this approach? Right, so I want you to think about when you're trying to do a survey design project, think about the problems in a systems perspective, not only at the micro level. Okay, so now you have some ideas in your mind. Those are procedures that normally a research scientist should follow to plan a study. So first is to do the literature review, and second, identify problems. So after you identify problems, identify your target users, and then you decide your study objectives, list of questions, and form hypotheses. And then you decide your methods about how to collect data from your participants. think most of you are familiar with the process, right? Right.
Especially for the PhD student, I think you also have to follow to write your PhD in this kind of process, right? It's like, to try to think this way. So where did you start? Now we have some problem. We studied some preliminary cannot very efficient before. Keep that in mind, okay?
So how do you do literature review? Those are some sources of research ideas. So your ideas can come from your everyday life, can come from some critical issues. Like for example, if you sometimes people they will check discovery news or some technology news, but some of the technology too advanced, it does not really applicable to our life, right? Right. So you have to think about critical issues, and sometimes you get an idea from case research, and also from a theory. Right. So those can be the sources of research ideas. And what are sources of literature review? The first, journals, right? Second, abstracts, reports, and thesis dissertations, proceedings. And I think for a survey designer, maybe abstract would be most useful. So we can easily pick up the idea of the whole paper. But if you are trying to do some innovations in your service design methodologies, maybe you should focus more on journals, because they follow a more stringent methodology, step by step, how to perform research, how to collect data. And so you should focus your literature on the journals. And what about internet and magazines and books? The problem of internet and magazines and books is that sometimes they are not very reliable. They may come from only one person's perspective or two persons' perspective. Right. So if you use that to form your research or survey design ideas, that would be very dangerous, because you have to actually you get some information at here, and it's good you double check and verify the idea you get from any of the resource, and double check with all the resources. Right. So if you see the patterns, the ideas comes from different resources again and again, and that means there's some idea or some areas that needs to be explored in service design. So yeah, just keep this in mind. So when you're doing literature review, not only look at journals, sometimes PhD focus on here. Right. Then those are some good information that you can double check, but they are dangerous. Don't use information here to drive your direction of your survey design. Right. Okay. So here are some steps conducting a literature review. First, you have to identify and limit the topic. Like for example, if you want to study a survey design in an area of healthcare, but healthcare is a very big area. So what kind of topic you want to focus? Like in the healthcare, there are a lot of problems happening in the patient care and in emergency room, or in some radiation in pharmacy, and there's a lot of areas they have problems. So you have to limit your topic in a particular area when you do your literature review. First, you identify some important area, and then of course, you have to use your literature wisely. Again, like internet and magazines, they're dangerous. So use them wisely, and you have to read and evaluate. Sometimes don't be too greedy. So because you can get so much literature, so if you don't know how to make the stuff, then there's this no, it's endless work, endless literature. And you have, and after that you got some literatures. And it's good you can sort information into different categories, like different problematic areas, so that you can kind of get general idea about those things really deserve some explorations, investigations, and that would really help you to identify your research or your design topic. Okay, so that's the literature review, and ideally we can identify some problems from literature review. And then next is specify your target users. Here. Right, so your users, sometimes they're primary users, sometimes they're secondary users. If you are designing electronic learning system, a learning tool, then maybe the parents, they are secondary users, right? And your primary users or clients are the kids. So you not only need to fulfill the needs of the kids, but you have to think about behind the kids there are so many parents, so they have a lot of expectations about the content. So your job is not only to make the content graphically as much as possible, but you have to think about the content. Does it really reflect the needs of the parents? Is that what parents they want their kid to learn? So you have to think about, even though you focus on users, they are different categories, primary and secondary.
And then sometimes the parents hold it, right? Because if they are kids, maybe they don't have a ability to buy it, then maybe you also have to satisfy.
Right. That's a good point. So when you are doing design, you don't only focus one population. Think about sometimes there are secondary users population. And also this, you have to also think about if you are designing a service for people like here or here, or you want to focus general people. Right. But imagine if you are designing a coffee shop service, and so if you are designing a coffee shop really accommodates people cannot walk, or they have limitations, or you're designing for general people, or you're designing a particular population, and here maybe they are very rich, or maybe they are very poor. So you have, when you are thinking about your users, your clients, your customers, put this distribution on your head. Who are you focused on? Who are your users, clients, and customers you're focused on? Since if you focus on people that are rich, then the design will be different, right? Yeah. So keep this in mind. Right. So next you have to decide which method to use. So before that, maybe we go back to here. So you specify your users, and then you have your design objectives, right? After that, you list some of your questions. Right. So sometimes we have some questions, we'll have some hypotheses. So how do you form your hypothesis? PhD students, maybe you can answer this question.
什么呀？
假设，这两个中间的假设。
This is a very traditional and formal procedure to conduct a research.
If you cannot answer very well, I'm ashamed, I feel, right? Because I know your history very
I
well.
think they are very shy, so they have answers in their mind. So,
I hope so.
right. So once you list your questions, and you have to have some hypothesis, right? And for your research or your study, so you have some like a hypothesis means something you want to verify, right? So it really will influence the survey design methods here. Right. So actually there are so many methods, and why you pick observation, why don't you pick interview, why don't you pick a survey, why don't you pick contextual inquiry, why don't you pick a lot of methods that you can choose. Right. So your hypothesis really will influence the methods that you choose. So, alright, so how can we form a hypothesis? Okay, this is just a very simple example I found from the internet. So, the question of the kid is that whether bunnies, books, and planes, they are living or non-living things. So that's a research question, whether or not they are living or non-living things. That's a question. But hypothesis, first, living. Book, non-living. The third, flower is a living thing. So you have some question in mind, and so okay, so I want to verify this idea. I want to verify the second idea. I want to verify the third idea. So I want to find out if this is a fact, or if this is a fact, or if this is a fact, then if that will influence the way I collect data, right? So that's a forming hypothesis. And this will be another example, survey design example. Okay, so the problem here, okay, so you got some problems from literature review, or you got some question. So there's a high abandon rate for a business website. Right, so people, when they enter this website and try to interact with your service or something, and they quit or they close the screen. So there's a high abandon rate. So that's a problem. Okay, so, and then we form a hypothesis. So you may suspicious about the reason. And the reason you think that, okay, maybe our customers don't trust the claims on our website. So you form your hypothesis, right? Okay, I think they don't trust. All right, then you can come up with different ideas, right? So if they don't trust, and then the first idea is, okay, I put consumer code right below the headline. This is the second idea, add a video proving your claims and understand your return policies within 2 weeks. So you can, from your hypothesis, then you will generate some ideas. And then you do some field experiment study to verify the ideas and verify here. So this is another example of how to form hypothesis. Okay, so actually the research questions will influence, and hypothesis will influence the way that you collect data, right? So actually those will also influence your data collection methods. The first, of course, time, resources, and knowledge. So sometimes if you don't have knowledge about the specific methods, then you're not going to touch that. And sometimes you don't have money. Sometimes you only can have money to support 10 observations. That will influence the methods and also the time. And so scale of the study. If it's a 1 year survey design project, and sometimes if you go to industry and your manager may only give you 2 days, and so maybe it's Monday and Wednesday you have to give me some ideas about what the customers they are thinking now. So within 3 days, how can you get the ideas of your customers? Right, so there are so many methods, and that will also influence the methods that you choose to get answer. So regarding the way to collect data from placements, there's a direct approach, an indirect approach to approach your placements. And a lot of times the US companies, they will hire another company and they have a big pool of placements. So you just provide your the type of users you're looking for, and the companies that look for the placements for you, and just give them how many, and age range, gender, and their specific user characteristics or customer characteristics. The companies, they will try to find people for you. So that will be considered a direct approach. And for a direct approach, of course, we researchers, we designers will approach our placements with telephone or face-to-face. So actually there are some sampling methods. But these methods, they are more of a qualitative methods. But for the quantitative methods, again, this up here. So if you're doing a marketing approach, you may want to do a systematic sampling, or you may want to do there's so many methods in quantitative part. And for the qualitative parts, normally people will choose purposeful sampling. And purposeful sampling means if you're doing a survey design project, of course you cannot do observations of 100 people, right? So you have to do a purposeful sampling. And purposeful sampling is that before you start your data collection, you specify your characteristics of your placements. Like if you're focusing on the healthcare in an emergency room, or you're focused on a specific user population, you specify the user characteristics at the beginning. So it means that you only focus looking for people they can fit with your definition. So that's called purposeful sampling. And convenience sampling is not encouraged, but a lot of people use that. It means you go out in the field and whoever you see, then you talk to that person. Right. So for this approach, there is one problem. So the problem is that sometimes the person you meet is located at here, or the person you meet is located at here, but you're interested in here. So sometimes it's very dangerous, but you never know, right? You never know who are the people, the person that you meet, and whose his background and where he is or she is located. And the snowball sampling means that whenever you find your placements, and then you can ask your placement to recommend another person who can also provide you good information on your survey design project. It's called snowball sampling. And those three methods, they're used very common in qualitative related research. And of course, in survey design research, it's very useful using this. Right? But if you are dealing with a marketing approach, you might want to use survey questionnaires. And for that case, you will have a category of sampling methods for quantitative research sampling methods. Like I just said, systematic sampling. It means that you get your placements randomly select from different areas. Right. So you have a systematic way of picking people at different areas, so that you can get a general understanding about the populations, what they are thinking about your service, And another approach is called clustered sampling, and sometimes people use random sampling. So there are a lot of methods that people choose to select their participants. And for survey design, I would recommend you use purposeful sampling. Okay, so another important thing is doing the schedule. Right, so sometimes you're very likely to ignore this, but this can happen a lot before you talk to your participants. Right. The first is you have to establish convenient windows. So meaning that you have to provide your contact information to a person, and you have to have the contact information of the person you talk to. And also, you have to avoid double booking. And you have to do confirmation and reconfirmation. And the third point is most important. Because a lot of time when you already make appointments, and when the time gets to the time you have to meet, and a lot of times people don't show up, or they might forget about the thing. So if you don't remind them before, like maybe a couple hours ago or one day before, if you don't remind them, they will forget about the thing. So confirmation, reconfirmation is very important, and also you have to provide some compensations to them to encourage them to join your projects. And when you meet with your participants, and sometimes you have to build a rapport between you and your participants. Right? For the examples that we just gave, like about doing sampling with people with some special disease. Right? So if you don't have some consensus about the work that you are doing, and a lot of times they are not willing to reveal some private information to you. So it's very important at the beginning you have to do this. And then, of course, you get the written consent. I'm not sure about in Korea, is that important or not? In Taiwan, it's not important.
Korean somehow in between, but whenever I ask students to do, I would make a form and then with my sign, and then they have to use that kind of consent to go out and then do some research. So, but I don't think many people really care about this.
US care
Right?
about this very much. Alright, so we finished the four boring parts. Now, those are some areas that you can work on your survey design projects. Of course, there are more, right? So I'll try to provide you some examples. Like first is transportation, warehousing, healthcare, social assistance, education, arts, entertainment and recreations, accommodation and food services, or finance and insurance, or real estate, or renting, rental and leasing. So those are some areas that you can kind of explore for your survey design projects.
Real estate 무슨 임종이야?
Okay, so this will be the first example in transportation and warehousing. So this will be airline. It's called Virgin Atlantic. So they have door-to-door upper class service. So can anyone guess? I think you can get an idea, right? Door-to-door upper class service. So they provide this service and they make good money. So door-to-door service, upper class service means whenever you want to go take an airplane, there will be a driver who will go to your place, take you out, and pick up your luggage, and they'll take you to the airport, and they'll drop you in a fast, high-speed walk through custom, the special pathway, right? And they'll take care, they'll check in your luggage for you, and they will drop you off at the high-class lounge. So you can, all you need to do is just sit there relax, and they'll check in all your luggage and checking everything for you. Then, so at the time when it gets to getting on board, then you get on board, and when you go out of the airplane, then you see a driver with your luggage. So that's your
就通道大班的。
Only for the first class?
class.
So including business or what?
So if you have some money and you can join this kind of program, right, and they make a big money from it. Right. So you can see whenever you want to go out, you have big luggage, right? So you have to carry and check in and wait, how much weight, and there's so many things you have to do. Right. So
都是给有钱人用的吧？
another one, I think most of you already know
我
it.
看过。
I think in 1994 or sometime, FedEx, they launched this kind of service. So I think most of you already know it. Like whenever you try to send a package to any person to any locations, after you send out a package, you get a serial number. So you can use that number to track the location status of the transit details of the packages. Right. So this, and nowadays they have a lot of different services now. Right. So the FedEx, they're the first company, they saw the idea, and they found out that by launching this kind of service, according to the data, the paper, it says they save $4 million per year of their in their customer center, and call center. So it reduces the number of calls that people try to track their packages. So you can see if you have a good service design, you can save the corporations a big money.
Why it becomes safe? Because
People
if the
try to
calling is-
call
yeah,
and-
calling is reduced, can save it.
So you don't need to hire so much people, 24 hours standing online and to try to deal with customers' different problems, right? And in the US, their human power charge very high, right? If they work 1 hour overtime, then they will charge a lot from the company. And even though it's 1 hour charge, sometimes also apply some insurance and a lot of things on top of the rate. So it's expensive manpower in the US, so they save a bit money for that. This will be another example, and it's very current example in healthcare. I got this idea from like New York Times or somewhere, and so it's a video. So you can see there are two people here, the time is the same, but these two people, they want to go to a hospital. But you can see this will be a design of Halo Health, and this is traditional way. You can see how much time different between the two. Alright, some of you may already see the video.
I'm doing great. I love it when you say you can.
哇，一车呀！
Just keep on smiling. Every time I think of it, I feel like I can fly away.
They choose actors very well. Try to smart and so
那中国人就是会的会的。
this they take the film a little bit exaggerated way. So, but you can see the two different the new ideas with the traditional approach, and but their solution may not be as good as you can imagine, but right. So there's some possibilities out there for you to explore to find out. So this will be idea in healthcare. Okay, this will be another idea that I found on the internet, and it's about redesign the touch point. So this will be in the restaurant in New York City, and so the idea is about they change this touch point about ordering wines. So they use the iPad, right? So why they say this will be a good idea? Why the restaurant they get more orders of wines than before is that since they think passing wine in the restaurant is kind of emotional stuff, and iPad can provide people with some emotional arousal and emotional affair about particular experience. So comparing to traditional menu, you can see the item, only the item with the price. But sometimes you don't know which to pick and a lot of information, you have no idea. But if you're showing the customers with this interactive interface and show it to them, and the restaurant they found this idea increase the likelihood of people ordering wines. So and also increase the likelihood of customers they order more expensive wines than before. Right. So this is just an idea of just redesign one touch point. Right. And iPad is just matched very well with the tasting wine. So just example in the food service